What does it mean to have a covenant with the everything nothing? So clearly in the four covenants that we looked at right now, there is a counterpart. There's a partner with whom we're transacting, having an agreement. But what about God? Credo of Modern Kabbalist by Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi and Rabbi Daniel Siegel. So last lesson we were gearing up towards talking about the feature of covenant, which is a pivotal feature in the new emerging Jewish theology. We talked about three triangles that make nine value points, and that is God, Israel, and Torah. Creation, revelation, and redemption, and then Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim, Torah, divine service, and acts of kindness. And to complete the system to a system of 10, as of the 10 Sefirot, the last and most pivotal to Jewish thought is covenant. So today we're going to focus on covenant, and especially before we jump into covenant as a feature in Jewish spiritual practice and thought, let's understand the term, the concept covenant, to begin with. So the short is that covenant is like a contract forever, an everlasting contract. A contract, by definition, is an agreement between two entities that has a defined duration. Covenant is an agreement that is forever. And let's jump into the words of Reb Zalman himself as he reviews the topic of covenant. This is really just an opening and a little bit of the etymology of the term and also the theological concept as it derives from our history. Let's jump right into it. No other religion really talks about, and before I start, let me just say that we are on page 23 of Credo of a Modern Kabbalist, and I want to recommend that you get the book if you're one of the regulars of this this video, this Cyber Yeshiva. Get the book on Amazon, Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, Credo of a Modern Kabbalist, and you can read in preparation, and I will always cite the page we're on so you can have it in front of you. So we're on page 23 right now. No other religion really talks about covenant the way we do. We see ourselves as contracting partners with the Creator. Others may speak of surrender as servants, and can you guess who those others are? He's referring here to the Muslims. As sinners who need to be redeemed. And guess what? We're talking about brothers and sisters who are Christian, or of souls that need to be released from rebirth. And guess who those are? He's referring here to the Buddhists. It is the idea of Brit that we find a second place where there is a crucial difference between East and West. In Eastern spiritual traditions, there is no concept of covenant. Obviously, who would you have a covenant with? For example, how could one make a covenant with a Tao? If I were to try and speak for Lao Tzu, I would have to say a covenant made with the Tao wasn't made with the Tao. This beautiful, what we call the beautiful paradoxes of the Eastern koan tradition, right? What is the sound of the clap of one hand? So you gotta love those. But obviously, where everything is just pure being, the relational aspect is, by definition, is absent, and covenant then has no meaning. This is because a person cannot make a covenant with, quote, that which is, end quote. Such a thing consists only of its own being, of pure, quote, isness, end quote. On the other hand, we Jews say that we have a brit with God. And obviously, if you're more accustomed to Ashkenazi pronunciation, so we say bris, brit, same thing. It is true that God has also told us, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I will be that I will be. That God is pure being, and isness. Ehyeh asher ehyeh is the Torah description of the Tao, of the be all, be it, be end. At the same time, God has also said, quote, you will be my people and I will be your God, end quote, which is the foundation for a covenant. So you can see that Reb Zalman here is pointing out that actually in Torah we have both. We have the dualism of the relationship, the relational transaction with everything, with God. And we also have the beingness, the isness of God. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. So where does covenant come from? What is the history? What's the evolution of the term of covenant? So first is the feudal covenant. The idea of covenant emerged in ancient times as a way for people to gain protection against invasion. They would approach a powerful overlord who commanded an army and agree to exchange something like the following. We will join your army when you have to fight a war. We will also pay you tribute and grind our grain at your mill. In return, you will come to our rescue if any of these named or unnamed enemies come to our territory unbidden. And what we're seeing in the world right now is in many ways resort back to warlord activities. There's a little side comment here, and Reb Zalman is observing at the time the book is written, which is in 2000, the early 2000s. The parallel of this kind of warmongering, covenant-like geopolitics, so much more so at the times we're living in right now, unfortunately. So there's a feudal covenant that is based on defense, mutual defense, or aggression interests. But then there's a higher level up of covenant, which Reb Zalman here defined as the commerce covenant, or the commerce in covenant. In commerce, the concept of covenant is different. Merchants see covenant as an ongoing contract whose clauses can include exclusive usage, franchise licenses, and terms that continue rather than expire. So here you see that it's very much like a contract. It's just ongoing. This is very special and goes beyond the feudal covenant. Why? While there might be differences of opinion between the parties to the agreement with regard to the quality of the merchandise or how to share in profit and loss, the negation of the covenant does not result in war. So here there's an up-leveling of the functionality and the morality of this style of covenant, the merchant covenant. For example, a trade embargo, such as the one which many countries applied to South Africa, may be seen as a merchant's approach to ending an intolerable condition within the community of nations without going to war. This represents, at the very least, an effort to resolve an important conflict at a higher level than warfare. At the same time, merchant agreements still leave room for even higher levels of covenant. And by the way, you can see the merchant covenant in effect in the sanctions of Russia, for instance, as a result of the Crimea, of them taking over Crimea. So we see a little bit of the same. Instead of having an aggressive response by NATO, instead there's economical pressure. But the evolution of covenant does not end there. There's a teacher and student covenant. And here we're talking specifically about the spiritual teacher and the spiritual student. When a mature student studies for rabbinic ordination, the teacher makes a contract with that student which might say the following, and this is based on the model of the Aleph Smicha program. Here's a list of the things which you need to study. When you have done these things and developed these skills in a way that makes me feel very sure you can pass on the traditions to the next generation, then I will give you smicha. Meanwhile, we will also meet at periodic intervals so that we can talk directly to one another and see what progress you are making. And in some ways, the spiritual student and the spiritual teacher, that relationship, that learning continues forever. There are different levels of smicha. You get smicha, but then you need the next smicha, and further on the next smicha. And the teacher, the mentor, is so crucial. In this case, the covenant is ongoing, based on trust, and unlike the covenants I have already described, does not need to include any punitive clauses. And this is exactly how Reb Zalman really acted, and with his students. And the last level of covenant, and with that we're going to close this lesson, is obviously spousal covenant. The best example of Brit as an overarching agreement is a marriage contract. Such a covenant is intended from the outset both to evolve and change in any number of particulars, while also enduring as a fundamental agreement. So here you see that we have a covenant that's forever, but the substance of that covenant may and actually is assured to evolve and change over the lifetime of the marriage or of the married couple. As we study this kind of covenant in greater detail, we find that its most basic hallmark is likely to be the intention that the agreement continue and endure in the face of any number of challenges. A simple contract, on the other hand, is intended to be fulfilled and completed. So we looked at covenant at the lowest level as a feudal, defense-based covenant. Then we looked at the commercial covenant, the teacher-student covenant, and then the spousal covenant. And we're going to wrap this lesson up here. As we continue in the book, we're going to look into greater detail of what does it mean to have a covenant with the everything nothing. So clearly in the four covenants that we looked at right now, there is a counterpart. There's a partner with whom we are, we're transacting and having an agreement. But what about God? I shall be as I shall be. What about God, which is the reality, the being that is that envelops everything? That is a different kind of covenant. With that, thank you for joining this lesson. I look forward to being with you again at the next lesson next week. May we all be blessed with agreements that are enduring, are changing, are flexible, and ever taking us to greater and greater heights in our own evolution. Amen. Shalom for now. Please subscribe by clicking the red button below. Like, share, comment. It is great to have you here. See you later.